I put a lot of work and time into Faith No More myself, and when I was asked to do it, I said I would do it because it means something to me, and I want to make sure that, maybe the perception of the band and with this record coming out, that things are put in the right order. We didn't really have a meeting to decide who's going to go out and do press for Faith No More because we don't exist as a band anymore. So I was asked to do it. I didn't really feel it was necessary to talk to anybody else about it. And I want to say my side of the story so that they don't get to say their side of the story. Believe it or not, I'm happy about the breakup. I'm not sad about it. I think that I was more sad about it before it happened. And when it did happen, it was actually a big relief. I've thought it was imminent since we started playing. I mean, it was just a matter of when, you know. I'm surprised that we kept it together as long as we did. I mean, they say 16, 17 tension-filled years. And also great years. I mean, I'm glad we stuck around because really a lot came out of it. And the longer we were together, I think the more freedom we had to experiment with stuff, the more we could travel to places that we'd never been. And at the same time, time was eating us away little by little because there was less time for us to have normal lives back at home. So it is a real relief because I can have a normal life now. And so it's not so bad. The first time we ever came to Britain, we did an interview for Melody Maker, and we got in a drunken fight with the tape recorder on. And I remember waking up just so embarrassed because it was our one chance when anybody wanted to interview us and how we'd blown it. And then I went to the newsstand and I read the interview, and it was hilarious reading. And I realized that there was something kind of charming about a band that fights a lot. And I think that the press picked up on that and continued with that, and I think that we were happy to oblige. I mean, there was a lot of tension, and we were like a democracy, like a real democracy, with no leader in the band. So everything was a compromise, and everything was a battle. That's true. I don't know with that if it's that way with other bands or not. I'm not sure. I think it probably is, but we were also probably not as shy to publicize that because it made good reading. It ended with a bang and a whimper, of course, in typical Faith No More fashion. I mean, it was this thing where I was always wondering, when we split up, because when I was in the band, there was always this knife hanging over my head. And I felt like sometimes everybody else is responsible for putting that knife over my head, and I held a knife over other people's heads too. It's kind of the way we related to each other. And I expected this huge bang would happen. And ironically enough, we had just done this tour of Spain and Portugal, and it was really fun. And we broke up the day after we got back from the tour, So that was kind of a bang. And then it was actually kind of a whimper, too, because there weren't really any hard feelings. And it wasn't such a negative thing. It was disappointing a little bit. We had a tour booked for Europe that I wish we would have done. But it was okay, I really didn't even have that many hard feelings. So in a way, that was really a whimper. We've been hearing rumor breakups since we did that first interview in 1986 or 87 or something. And, there was one thing where I remember there was a report in Melody Maker that there was an incident where we got in a fight at the airport and one of us pulled a gun on the other. That was a great rumor. But, these things have been going on forever and ever and ever. And, it's funny because before we fired Jim, our guitar player, I think that there were rumors that he was going to get fired for about a year before that. And it did happen, but That was a strange thing. I don't know what it is and how people can just read our minds, or we're not very discreet with how we conduct ourselves, but people seem to know what's going on way ahead of the fact. Well, midlife crisis is an interesting thing. I didn't have a personal midlife crisis, and that's not what made me want to break up the band. But then again, our singer just turned 30, and it's possible that he had something to do with him. I think more of a midlife crisis and the breakup of the band had to do with the fact that maybe people, after being together for so long and being stuck together and being different people, and where good things came out of it, also a lot of compromise, individual compromise came out of it. I think everybody kind of got to a period where they wanted to start satisfying themselves completely. Because in Faith No More, no individual was completely satisfied. And that's why it made sense. I mean, we've been making records and touring and being on this cycle with very little time for everything else. And even though everybody has had side projects that were personally fulfilling, they always took a back seat to Faith No More. And I think that also became really frustrating. So that probably is really the reason of what happened. And I can understand it. I mean, it's been said, why don't you just take a break? Why don't you take a couple of years break and take it off? And at first, that's how I thought about it too, and that's probably what we needed. But the phone doesn't stop ringing when you're on a break, because you're still a band and you're still things. Oh, you've got to do this show. Come on, you're screwing yourself if you don't do this. Oh, come on, this interview. They have to do this interview here. You've got to come on. If you do this record, if you get it out by Christmas, the record company says this. There's always that carrot, and in a way, it can drive you crazy. And as long as you are committed, you're never going to make the rest of your life a priority. So sometimes it's good just to make a break. Our product was good, our records were good, we're happy with all of that. It was, we kept the inspiration. Might as well just leave it on a good note. Well, I've never had a problem with side projects. I think people should get their own thing out when they need to do it. The problem with side projects is when people in the band are depending on somebody and they have a side project and they don't tell the band what they're doing. It's the lack of communication that was really the problem with the side projects, because, you'd be saying things like, oh yeah, I've got this band and, I'm just going to do this little tour for a couple weeks. We're going to take a break from rehearsal. Okay, that's fine. Go for it. Have a good time. And you get these, you see these interviews that come back to you like, this is my big project now. Faith No More is my side project. And you're thinking, well, why did you have to do that? I mean, why do you have to make things difficult? And so things would be difficult in that way, where you couldn't communicate and you couldn't figure out just where everything is so you can put your own priorities in order. It's pretty much business as usual for mostly everybody, except for myself, which is I've been doing some production. I've produced a couple bands. I went to Finland last month and produced a band called CMX, and I'm going to produce a band in Germany called Think About Mutation. I've been doing some remixes and stuff like that. And I'm definitely going to get some music together and work on an album for next year. Also, I'm getting a little indie label together. We're going to put out what you would call kind of world music, but it's not going to be world music. It's going to be exposure to maybe bands from other countries that would never be heard, more like a platform. So there's a hell of a lot going on for everybody. I mean, Roddy's got an Imperial Teen record coming out. Patton's working on a Mr. Bungle record, and he's got his Fantomas band that's coming out. And, Borden just did a tour with Ozzy. I don't know what he's doing after that. So, but I mean, really, it's not much different than what was going on when we were Faith No More. I don't have a problem calling everybody and talking to everybody. I actually probably like everybody a little bit more because they don't have anything hanging over my head. They can't do anything to me, and I don't have to do anything to them. We can just talk if we want to. There is really no reason to have to get together. And when you take that tension away, actually everything's kind of nice. I mean, I think they're really all talented people, and they do have they have the right to do what they want and express themselves, and I don't think that I have to tie my life into what they do with theirs. It's like a marriage, where it can be very difficult, but there's 4 people instead of 1 person you're married to, and everybody's got their own biorhythms, that sync up at different times, and everybody has their own say, and everybody can veto anything, and there's nobody that can take charge really and make everybody do something. Everybody is the boss. I mean, in an ideological sense, it was a great thing because we were a democracy. We started the band being a democracy and saying, nobody has the power to do anything. This is going to be a collective. Everything is a collective decision, And the other thing we started the band with was we don't want to become old and shitty like all my other idols have, I don't want to be that guy who's up on stage just thinking about his house payments. And that's how we started the band. We were 18 years old, and I think it was important for us to really maintain that I guess, naivete throughout our career, even the better we did, because it kept us real. And I think when it stopped becoming real, I think it was necessary then to make things stop. I don't really think there's a point of Faith No More getting back together unless there would be a reason to do so. I mean, if we had an inspiration, if we've worked out our personal things and we feel satisfied and we think we can work together again, I think that wouldn't be a negative thing. I think that would be a very positive thing. But there would have to be an inspiration to do so. Right now, I mean, the way everybody is and where everybody's head's at, I couldn't see that happening. I think the thing with reunions, and they have this concept because a lot of bands have made horrible reunions, which are obviously for money, I mean, most bands that get together obviously for money. So when people say, "Are Faith No More going to do a reunion tour?" They're always saying it with that thought in mind. But we turned down a lot of money to break up. I'll just say that for the record. If we do it, it's going to be because we're inspired and we can make something good. I think all the records we've made have come out really well. And if we can do it again, I think we should do it. Faith No More was a long, fond, and odious memory, really. I mean, in the course of a day, I would go from the heights to the bottoms. There was always something that was sticking in your gut, and there was always something that was really interesting. I mean, one of the great things about Faith No More was really traveling to places we would have never been to, and playing for them, and people knew who we were, and learning about the world. I think that was one of the greatest things. And also, to tell you the truth, being in a band, being able to experiment or try something different, and have fans that would go along with you and let you do that, and not be pigeonholed, and make things fun. Probably the worst thing about it was really just the fact that you had to commit so much time and energy into a band where you were with 5 people who were very headstrong and never really saw eye to eye all the time. It was just it was a wearing down process. It just kind of got you after 10 years or so of nonstop work. The way tracks got selected originally was after we broke up, I got word that the record company was making a retrospective of Faith No More, and obviously that would be probably the singles and the better-known songs. And I thought about it, and I was thinking, I wonder what they're going to do. I made a couple calls to the manager, like, do you know exactly how they're going to do this and what they're going to do? And he said, well, I'll put you in touch with them, and maybe you should get involved. And I thought that would be a good idea because I wanted just to make sure that, it was done in a way that we would approve of. I wanted to make the songs chronological, for one thing, because I think that through our career, our music has changed a lot, and our sound has changed a lot. And it's good to hear things in that way, so that if it is a retrospective of Faith No More, in this case, it would actually be an interesting thing to do, because now you can look back at everything and all the periods we went through and maybe make some sense out of it. The other thing is I wanted to make sure that we had something that was a little bit interesting, maybe stuff that people hadn't heard before, because I had some tapes at my house, like in the basement that nobody had heard, and I thought they sounded good enough to release. They're not perfect, and they would never be singles, but they're also another side of the band that maybe people haven't heard, so I thought it might be a little bit interesting. I mean, a compilation is like, okay, who cares, right? I mean, we're very self-effacing, and I think that's one of the things that I liked about us. But at the same time, it's a good thing, because really all these strange songs that we did were because of years of connecting with people who really encouraged us to do it. I mean, the reason we kept putting out records was because there was a demand for us to put out records. So there were people that really liked what we did and followed us along and grew with us. And so, in a way, I'm happy to say we were one of those bands that did develop over the years, and people that listened to us developed with us. So I think it's really a two-way thing. I mean, a compilation is kind of a retrospective is kind of a pompous, ridiculous thing. At the same time, it's it shows, kind of a period of time in somebody's life. I never really had any favorite songs, well, there's some songs that I hate at certain periods of time, but they're all kind of like they're kind of like having children in a way. You don't want to really favor one over the other. I mean, once it's done and it's released, you're kind of letting it to the four winds. I don't think any of us really ever listen to our albums after we finish them. We kind of just move on. So there aren't really any favorites. There are other different kind of compilations we could make. We could do a metal compilation because each of our albums had like kind of heavy songs. We could do a pop compilation, or we could do a soul compilation because there are elements of each on each record. And I thought that would be kind of interesting too, but that's a lot of CDs to be coming out, and maybe it's better just to stick to the singles or something. I can't really figure out exactly what we were and what we did anyway. We kind of did a lot on intuition and what we were feeling at the time and didn't ask questions. So it might take a few years for me to even figure out what the hell we were doing. I like the Bee Gees. I like the old Bee Gees stuff, but that's not really the reason we picked the song. We picked the song because we were in Guam. We went to this bar, and it was a really strange bar where they had these huge screens and they were showing porno films, like hardcore porno films, and a karaoke, which was bizarre as it was. And there was only like 3 people in this bar, and we were thinking, why the hell did we come to this place? These people brought us there. And this song, I started a joke, was on the karaoke with this, where they had the bouncing ball and the words underneath this porno film. We're thinking, what is this song? What are these words? Because they're these bitter words, with this really surreal scene going on. And I was there with Patton when we heard it, and we were thinking, we got to find out what this song is and do a cover of it, because just the lyrics alone they said it all. I didn't really pick I Started a Joke as the single, or none of us really picked it. But I think that it really is the correct way to put out the last track of Faith No More, because it really does sum up kind of our aesthetic and also just the way our band went. Our band was a joke, and the joke was on us at the end. And I think we were a really ironic band in a bunch of ways. One way is that we were always getting compared to somebody until probably this last album, where we finally kind of created a category of our own. And ironically enough, that's when we decided to break up. We fought categories for 10 years, and then all of a sudden we didn't have to fight them anymore, and there was no reason to exist. And we also liked to mock a lot of things we saw in the music business, and we tried to have a sense of humor. And yet the joke was always on us too, because we always ended up looking a bit like monkeys when we did so. And we always kind of ended up in a way representing the music business, even if we didn't want to. And our whole career and our whole lives are really pretty much ironic, and the song I think it tells our story. I also think it's kind of funny because it was just recorded like in my basement at my house, and it has this kind of cheesy demo quality. It doesn't sound like any of the rest of our music, so it'd be kind of fitting that the last single we ever have comes out doesn't sound anything like anything else we've ever done. And I think that's a perfect ending stamp right there. Faith No More's epitaph should say, even when they sucked, Faith No More never sucked. How's that?